keep the bridge down. I used to think bridges were just machines with a view. Gears, brakes, gates, green lights that make boats behave. I'm 25, night tender on a double-leaf lift bridge across a black, polite river. My job is simple. Log traffic, watch for hails on VHF 13, lower the gates in sequence, raise the leaves only on verified requests, and never put the span in manual after midnight. Extra rules from my lead, Alvarez. Don't open for an unnamed vessel. Don't acknowledge horn signals you didn't see. And Chai, if the HMI asks for a double tap, you tell it no. He laughed when he said it. The laugh didn't stick. By 11:04 p.m., the tower had learned its hum. Window heaters fighting fog, rack fans keeping the PLCs warm, the vending machine down in the shack clicking like it believed in coins again. The label printer on the clipboard, used for lane closures and work orders, chattered on its own and spat a narrow thermal strip with no job number, just, "Do not raise." Along the edge in ghost gray, not matching any hour I live by. 3:13 am. The clock over the chart said 11:05. I stuck the strip to the monitor because paper makes superstition behave. The first odd thing was polite. 2 taps him on the tower glass, measured, not expansion, not sleet. I looked up at my reflection, a half-beat late, and behind my shoulder, in the black window, saw a head-on tilt toward my ear, mouth parted like it had reached the first half of a word. I blinked until glass remembered it was glass. A boat hailed on 13. The voice was the kind that belongs to commercial skippers. Calm math. Bridge, southbound tug requesting open. I checked AIS, no target. The camera on the upriver bend showed river-like oil and one lonely nav buoy deciding to be faithful. "Stand by," I said, "because policy is a door you can lock." The word span control HMI woke and offered a card I hadn't called. Confirm lift at 3:13? Under it, double tap to confirm. 2 tiny hearts pulsing like a dare in bedtime colors. I hit cancel. The screen thought about having opinions and cooled. The intercom for the catwalk clicked. "We haven't used it since the rehab." A voice eased out slow, careful, like each word had to be lowered into place with 2 fingers. "Don't raise." Not Alvarez, not the tug. The kind of museum voice cities keep to explain why touching bones is rude. I walked the sequence because hands like tasks. Left gate, right gate, approach lane signs. All green, all dull. On the tower door's little wired glass window, a palm bloomed in fog from the one swag outside. 5 long ovals and a round heel, and Wamsh slid mine down an inch before thinning. My own breath answered a second late on my side, and made a second story of the same hand. "Condensation," I told the door. "The way you talk to weather when you need it to be boring." At 11:29, something knocked twice. On the steel span below, a sound that traveled up the ladder and into my wrist where I was holding the rail. The river knocked back sometimes, logs, ice, but this was knuckles with manners. I put acoustic anomaly in the log and underlined, no visual, like a talisman. The VHF hissed. My own voice came through, wrong by half a breath. "I'm here." Then the careful one, closer. "Leave it down." I looked at my mic like it might bite and turned the squelch until the hiss remembered how to be air. The traffic lights at both ends blinked in sequence. Steady red, correct. And for one blink, everything aligned. Heaters, rack fans, transformer hum, even the distant highway on the far bank. The whole world kept one note for 3 steady beats, like the river had learned choir. In that held chord, the brake lever on Leaf B nudged on a hair toward release under its safety cap and stopped like a dog that remembered the word. AIS popped a target, then a target again named at my bow buffer. The camera upbound showed the dark. For a single frame, the water had texture like breath. A ring widening under nothing, and then it learned to be river again. The label printer coughed a second strip into my palm. "Keep gates closed." The edge felt damp, letters a little raised as if they'd sweated. The HMI slid a new card into my corner vision. Manual jog available. Double tap to confirm. The hearts pulsed like little animals. I locked the jog screen and said no the way you say no to stairwells. Fog crept in from the marsh like a deliberate thought. The red nav lights on the span beams made patient moons on the mist. Down on the sidewalk, a tap-tap moved from one gate to the other, measuring like someone practicing manners in the wrong century. The tower glass. Fogged. An oval again where my eye wanted to be. In it, a mouth shape, parted. On the first half of "Don't," a horn blew, one long. The inland signal for "I am nearing a bend." It came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Negative visual, I said into the VHF because sentences keep rooms together. The horn answered with "ah too," long like it had learned a second language wrong. The intercom whispered a bedtime rule. Don't open. At 11:53, the once span cam flickered to a view I don't own. Under deck, steel and cables, the guts tourists never see. For one frame, a hand pressed on the underside of the grating, 5 ovals and a heel, and slithered an inch along a line that had no dust to take it. Next frame, proper feed again, like the bridge was embarrassed. A text vibrated my pocket from unknown. Confirm lift 313. The attached map put the dot inside of the river, then inside of my tower, then on sat. The next line tried charm, double tap to confirm, with the little hearts. I turned the phone off. It stayed lit long enough to flip to my 3.0 flame, and back, like a muscle in glass. At 12:06, the fog pressed its cool face to the windows and riled. Palm flown. Rose on the inside, a thumb width higher than I can reach, and the slit upon my eyes before it thinned. The brake pressure gauge on leaf A stuttered through. 313. In its tiny LCD, where numbers shouldn't to belong, and remembered PSI like a good citizen. I did the brave thing that isn't, and ran the checklist out loud. Gates, down. Traffic, stopped. Weather, reduced visibility. Vessel, unverified. Span, down. Saying it made the room agree. The Margie, catwalk intercom. Clicked again. Keeper, the careful voice said, like a person tasting a word. Leave. It. Down. Below. Tap-tap moved along the stringers, patient, and matched my pulse without asking me. At 12:23, a different horn sounded, a little kid's party version, 2 notes, the right pitch, a beat late. Don't answer whistles, Alvarez says, and you think he's kidding until you work nights. The HMI showed the leaf angle acrometer at 0, and then, for a blink, at Shaker 13:3, before it flinched back. The PLC fault log stamped, so 313, and cleared itself like a person hiding a grin. A sedan pulled up on the eastbound lane and stopped at the gate like it owed me money. The driver rolled his window down and looked up into fog, which is a kind of prayer. He tapped the horn, whined twice. Gentle. I hit the PA and said, "Bridge closed for marine traffic, because lies sometimes keep bodies inside their cars." He nodded at nobody and put the transmission in park like he had chosen to be safe. The river did the all-aligned thing again. Current, wind, the hum inside the tower. One note that wanted to be a word. In that held breath, the counterweight motors shuddered once against their brakes like sleepers dreaming about stairs, and settled. The control handle under my palm cooled, or I remembered it was metal. At 12:41, the upriver camera caught a smear brighter than fog, and dimmer than light, a headlamp impression about a foot above the waterline, moving against current as polite as a ghost. In its wake, ripples pressed the rock revetment in tap-tapry rhythm and then forgot music. I printed a new laminated note because signs are spells. After midnight, no manual lift without supervisor. I taped it to the console where my hand sits when it's bored. The tape breathed and settled like lungs in miniature. A door down in the gear room thumped once, wood on steel, exact, and a cool draft ran up the stair like a rumor. The camera down there stayed honest until, for one frame, a head leaned near its lens and tilted, mouth ovaling, "Don't," then left it to its job. The sedan's driver got out and stood with his hands on his hood, looking at the type of fog that tells you your choices are none. He lifted a hand shoulder high and held it there like an old signalman. My radio borrowed my voice and said, "We're here." I wasn't on the mic. At 1:06, the HMI cheerfully crashed to a splash screen I've never seen. A blue river, a line that said, "Resume schedule 313," and the double-tap hearts doing their patient pulse. The leaf angle, red, and came back to 0 as if ashamed. The label printer fed me one more strip with the tired dignity of a saint card. Leave the bridge down. The fog pressed a final empalm, where my eye wants to be, and one slid me an inch. The intercom, kinder than any manual, said, "Don't go down. There is a lattice staircase to the pier that we are not supposed to love." I didn't. I wrote, "Quiet night," on the log because someone above my pay grade likes to see that phrase. The letters looked wet after they dried, like ink that had considered making a different decision. Satora 3/13. Because some hours volunteer for hard jobs, every bulb on the span blinked once and held the motors and heaters and fans and far-off highway all aligned. Their hum into one note like a machine trying prayer. The horn upriver sighed the long drift of a boat I could not see, and the brake levers under their caps stopped thinking about moving. The HMI cleared the feral card, reset the fault log, and returned to being a tool. Dawn unstitched the fog into river and road. The sedan was gone like a story people forget to finish. Alvarez came in at 6 with coffee and the stance of a man who has argued with water. "Quiet?" he asked. "Mostly," I said, and slid him the damp-edged strips. He frowned at, "Do not raise." Like it was a new regulation, then did what managers do. "Printer's old," he decided. He rapped the console with his knuckles the way doctors knock on ribs. The sound came back solid. He looked at the HMI, tapped the corner where Wurstar 3 would live if it had a house, and said, "We used to have a test script labeled 13. Somebody left a ghost. I swapped to days a month later and told payroll it was for my sleep. Some nights in my apartment, my fridge knocks twice, Mike said my 3/13, like a span asking for a lift, and my bathroom mirror fogs mice a thumb width higher than I can reach, while my palm I clears a coin and my slides a polite inch. When it does, I keep my hands off buttons with hearts and say, in the steady voice the tower taught me, keep the bridge down." For a long, thin moment the room hums, one note like motors under a floor. A head leans close to my left ear and practices the first half of D Don T. And then the pipes remember water, the clock remembers its number, and whatever was learning my levers a half beat behind me chooses someone else's river and leaves mine to carry cars across daylight. If you survived this far, leave your like to prove you are not afraid.